Hello everyone, and welcome to the Best of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. My name is Brian Reynolds, and I am the Archbishop's usual conversation partner on these shows. As our viewers know, Archbishop Kurtz is presently being treated for cancer and is out of town in North Carolina. As we wait for him to return, we thought we would take this opportunity to share some shows from the past organized around topical themes. It's November, and so we're going to focus on some November themes. On segment 1, we'll talk about the Feast of All Saints and All Souls. On segment 2, Archbishop Kurtz will identify his top 10 reasons to be thankful. In segment 3, we will anticipate the season of Advent and talk about Advent's virtue of hope. Thanks for joining us, and please keep Archbishop Kurtz in your prayers. Welcome, everybody, to Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz. It's November.
It's hard to believe. The year is moving toward the end, and the end of the church year.
It's so fast, and we have a great show today, Archbishop. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to talk with you again. We're going to start as November does with some key feast days. Now, the church talks about 2 feast days, the Feast of All Saints and the Feast of All Souls. Children talk about the Feast of Halloween.
That's right.
They add a third one to it,
That's right.
Which is connected, of course. So let's just talk for just a couple of minutes about All Saints, because that's a good one to start with.
Well, I'm glad we are. It's a very human feast day, because what we're doing is we're thinking of the church in a very big way. We're saying, well, often when I go to church, I think, well, I'm thinking about the people who happen to be in the pews. Sure. No, when we say church, or what we use the word communio, we're talking about the church on earth, meaning the whole globe, the whole universe of the earth. We're talking about those in purgatory who continue to be purified, which we'll talk about for All Souls Day, and then the saints in heaven. And together we make up, almost the way it's a choir, we make up that choir of communion, of faithful witnesses because of our connection with Jesus Christ.
I think a lot of Catholics, and certainly the broader community too, is confused sometimes about what we call veneration of saints. Why do we venerate saints?
Yeah, actually that's a good point. First of all, a saint is not placed instead of God. Right. In fact, the greatest saint, of course, is our Blessed Mother. And I always say, when we draw close to one of the saints, whether it's our Blessed Mother or one of the saints that is particular to us, basically that way of devotion is a means of drawing us close to Christ. And so the same way as in a family, we tend to want to do the right thing, but we often look at our brothers and sisters and want to have their help. And so when we talk about the saints, we're talking not only about imitating their life, which is part of what we're doing, but also asking for their intercession, so that in a sense, no one goes to heaven by themselves. We all, God bless us, we all hope that we will go to heaven, and we all hope that we will go together. And so as we join to Christ, that communion, or you almost see a procession, is going together, and the saints in heaven are the ones who will be welcoming us and who right now pray for us. So it's a great human way. If you understand the family and how important for us it is that we aren't simply saved one person at a time, but rather together we are called in union. And that's been a very ancient teachings of our church.
You know, you could almost make a comparison to our Holy Fathers calling us to other times he uses the word accompaniment.
Well, that's right. That's a good point. The saints accompany us. Yeah. That's a very good word.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's All Souls, and All Souls is another one that causes some confusion. Now, some cultural traditions around the world, Hispanics in particular, this is particularly a high feast day, while All Saints is a holy day of obligation and All Souls isn't. But the feasts and the festivals around All Souls, what does that mean? We're not worshiping the dead?
No, that's right. Here? That's right. Some cultures especially have a great respect for elders. Yeah. And for those who have gone before them. And I think we all should, and I think we all do, when we think about our own parents and grandparents, especially those who have died and gone before us. But in doing so, Brian, we're also aware that, for instance, when we go to a cemetery, At that cemetery, we're first of all giving witness to the fact that we believe in the resurrection. And so we believe that life does not end here on earth. That's a great belief. Secondly, we believe in the great dignity of the human body. And so the care at the cemetery is very much like that. And All Souls Day is connected with that. And thirdly, we recall the call that we have to pray for those who have died. And that's what we do at cemeteries, and that's what we do on All Souls Day.
In fact, help us, let's remind particularly our local audience, that on All Souls Day, you do a service at
It is.
Calvary
It's a mass.
Cemetery.
We have a mass right at Calvary, and it's a beautiful one. And I always like to think that those people who are coming to it, which includes many times some young people who come, are also visiting the graves of their loved ones. But I include at that mass everybody in the Archdiocese.
Yeah, very good, very good. You know, maybe let's talk about cemeteries a little bit.
Sure.
It's because All Souls is bigger than that, but you know, we haven't talked a lot about our apostolate, I call it, of the cemeteries. You know, we have 4 Catholic cemeteries that the Archdiocese oversees, and over 30 parish cemeteries. Yeah. But when I think about our local cemetery staff and the local ministry they provide, the care not only for the families of who are going through grieving or visiting the burial places of their loved ones, but there's a whole series of rituals. Our Catholic cemeteries has a monthly event for infants, family members of infants who've passed away. They have programs around Memorial Day for soldiers and for the war dead. They have an event for Advent, and we're going to talk about Advent later in the show, but Advent and Christmas ornaments. So could talk about cemeteries.
Some people have called the cemetery an outdoor chapel.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know what I think of when I go in there? I always think of the early church in which the church in persecution would go into the catacombs. Yeah. And where would they celebrate Mass? They would celebrate Mass on the tomb of a faithful witness. So that's also the derivation of having relics.
Yeah, on an altar, sure.
On an altar.
Sure.
And so that notion of being close to the dead, not simply to mourn, it is to mourn and to feel the loss we have, but also to be joined to them in our prayer, that they might be in heaven, and also we hope they're part of that legion or procession of saints that are going to welcome us someday to heaven. Yeah.
The outdoor chapel, it's prayer. It's a prayerful space,
Yeah.
and for goodness sakes, it's beautiful. I mean, Calvary Cemetery, they're all beautiful.
Really, all of the
Calvary
cemeteries are. We have to give a shout out, if you would, to Javi and all who are involved with the preparation and the work with our cemeteries.
And I know as we go across the diocese and the other 23 counties outside of Jefferson, where parishes often have the cemeteries, the people care deeply for those spaces. They hold them as sacred ground.
They do. No,
Yeah.
there's no question about it, Brian. And so the month of November begins, I think, very beautifully with this notion of remembering those who have died, the faithful in heaven and those who continue to need our prayers. Huh?
Very good.